From South Carolina Public Radio, this is the South Carolina Lede. I'm your host, Gavin Jackson, and this episode was recorded on February 10th, 2025 from South Carolina Public Radio Studios here in Columbia. On this episode of The Lede, we look at statehouse activity for this week, including what bills are moving and where, including one that would allow Scout Motors to be sold in South Carolina. That's currently illegal. There is a state Supreme Court hearing this week on the 6-week abortion law we'll be watching. And I speak with Rock Hill Representative Brandon Guffey about his efforts to keep children safe online. And our Senators Lindsey Graham and Tim Scott flew to the Super Bowl with President Donald Trump. The Super Bowl, which the Eagles won.
Yes.
We have more.
Yes.
We have a lot more, especially in the wind down section. You guessed it, what we'll be talking about in the wind down section. We have a couple calls from supporters, but we need you to call as well. 803-563-7169. Let us know what you thought of the game, what you're watching for, any Super Bowl commercials that stood out to you. I'm going to be honest, I didn't watch it. I listened to it. I'm old school. Let us know. We would love to hear from you guys. 803-563-7169. Let's look at what's on tap this week. Congress is in session, both the House and Senate. On the economic calendar, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell will be before Congress on Tuesday and Wednesday for his semi-annual briefing. And we get January CPI numbers on Wednesday.
Inflation.
And on Wednesday, the state Supreme Court will have a case, like we told you about, between Planned Parenthood South Atlantic versus South Carolina, seeking to determine at what point in a pregnancy does a, quote, fetal heartbeat, quote, occur as defined in the South Carolina Fetal Heartbeat and Protection from Abortion Act. Obviously, we've talked about this law before, but it's roughly 6 to 8 weeks is what we've been using. But based on this filing, we're going to try and nail that down some more, it sounds like. As for the State House this week, this is your captain speaking. It's the fifth week legislative session, and we're hitting our cruising altitude with calendars filling up and busy committee hearings. So we'll go ahead and turn that fasten seatbelt light off. But just be aware, guys, that turbulence can happen at any time, despite some clear conditions and movement on major legislative issues. So let's take a look at some meetings this week and what's getting our attention in the Senate. The Senate Judiciary continues to grind through bills with a subcommittee meeting Tuesday afternoon that has a slate of drunk driving and firearm-related bills. Budget hearings will continue in Senate Finance subcommittees. Education will hold a committee meeting Wednesday morning on bills dealing with using debit cards for lottery games, streaming of school board meetings, and a non-certified teacher pilot program. On Wednesday, there will be another Judiciary Subcommittee hearing in the morning on S-184 and S-244. These are bills dealing with liquor liability issues. Initial hearings took place last week before a packed hearing room, so those hearings will continue on Thursday morning as well. And there will also be a meeting on fentanyl-induced homicide, organized retail theft, and drug-induced homicide bills as well. So a lot there to be making its way likely to the Senate Judiciary agenda come the following week, and then the Senate calendar thereafter. From the Senate to the House Tuesday afternoon, the full Judiciary Committee will take up several bills, including one to make the state auditor an appointed position and social media regulations for minors. On Wednesday, a Judiciary Subcommittee will have a hearing on H-3924, making the minimum age 21 to purchase hemp-infused drinks. There will also be a hearing on liquor liability, H-3497. That's a hot topic because it's costing people money. Wednesday morning, there will be a hearing on the direct sale bill, H-3777, also known as the South Carolina Consumer Freedom Act. We'll have more on this bill in a quick moment. But on Thursday morning, a Judiciary Subcommittee will also take up several bills dealing with child sex abuse material. So, a lot going on this week in committee meetings, and of course, House and Senate lawmakers will be on the floor too, working through their calendars, which are filling up. Now, that House subcommittee meeting on the direct sales bill will be one to watch and one that has boatloads of money behind it. Oh, it's a boatload. Specifically from the auto dealers. Should it be a truckload then? Boat? Okay, we're going to go to mix it. It's okay. I'm allowed to. That's because the auto dealers are fighting to keep the current protectionist policies in place that prevent consumers in the state from buying electric vehicles directly from manufacturers like Tesla, Lucid, or soon-to-be Scout Motors and Blythewood, where once the $2 billion factory is complete in 2027, new electric SUVs will be rolling off the line. The company plans to build a massive experience center that will serve as part showroom, test drive facility, and factory tour. But as of right now, you won't be able to buy vehicles there. Now, I can't give you figures out on how much money has gone into virtually every lawmaker's campaign account until we get disclosures in April, but anecdotally, people have been talking. And it's a lot of money.
Is there anything else?
Boatloads, some would say. Now, you'd think a simple tweet from Elon Musk would help this cause. Alas, the man seemingly is too preoccupied. Doge. Nevertheless, Governor Henry McMaster said he would sign such a bill when we asked him about it last Monday at a groundbreaking for a new $200 million interchange off Interstate 77 that will feed into the massive Scout Motors plant already a year into construction.
Again, times are changing. It used to be you had to go to the store to buy things. You couldn't go. You got Amazon now. You have direct sales on all sorts of things. I think it's a good idea, and I know the General Assembly is interested. Of course, Scout's interested. There are a lot of businesses that operate on direct sales already, but things are moving faster and faster, and we want to be sure that the people of our state are able to get what they need, to get it quickly and as conveniently as possible. And the idea of all that tax money coming into South Carolina from sales here to help our schools, roads, bridges, and those kind of things is a very happy idea.
Now, it's unclear if this direct sale bill, H. 3777, will make it out of committee, but the fact that it's having a hearing is a step that hasn't happened in the past under the previous LCI committee chairman, Bill Sandifer. Now, Beaufort Republican Representative Bill Herb Kurzman is helming the committee that oversees labor, commerce, and industry. It's very broad. There's a lot to it. Also boats, some would say. He's helming the boat. Oh my gosh, I just subconsciously do this. South Carolina is one of 17 states that ban direct sales, while 18 states allow for it, and others have laws that carve out exceptions. This bill would allow Scout a carve-out since it would have a manufacturing factory that manufactures or assembles vehicles propelled wholly or in part by an electric motor. That's what's written in that legislation. So we will see what happens, and you can keep up with that daily action on the Statehouse Gavel, which you can find on sectv.org/news. Yeah, everyone jump aboard the gavel. No, gavel. Don't push all the wrong buttons. Now, you heard me mention that several bills dealing with online child safety and exploitation are moving forward in the Statehouse this year. And for one lawmaker, this is an incredibly personal topic. Rock Hill Republican Representative Brandon Guffey lost his 17-year-old son Gavin as a result of being extorted for photos of himself he shared with someone online. That alleged suspect has been arrested and was recently extradited from Nigeria to Colombia to face his arraignment in federal court last month. I spoke with Guffey about this experience, and he opened our conversation on This Week in South Carolina by discussing the tragedy that befell his family in 2022.
So Gavin was my oldest son at the time, 17 years of age, and he was contacted by a stranger online around midnight on July 27th, and by 1:40 a.m. he had taken his life. I didn't know exactly why, and as we started going through the investigation, we found out that he was a victim of a crime called sextortion. I had just won my primary race. I didn't really want to continue in politics because a life-shattering event like that shows you what's really important. And my wife said, absolutely not. You're gonna go down there. You're one of the few people that can make a difference and, make that your focus. And so that's what I did. Came into the house and immediately started trying to make a difference to save the next Gavin from being in that situation.
And tell us about that law that got passed in 2023. I mean, I remember seeing everyone pretty much in the House chamber being up there with you when that law made it through, when the bill made it through the House chamber, then over the Senate, then this eventually passed. But what does it do and how does it help folks?
So Gavin's Law, which is now named, I didn't originally write it to be named Gavin's Law, but it criminalizes the crime of sextortion, so the threatening of sharing images for gain. So you don't actually have to share images. It is the threat of sharing the images. It separates between a at-risk adult and children as one side versus adult to adult. But there's also different levels for whether it's a first, second, third offense. But if great bodily harm or death occurs, it adds on an additional 15 years as well. The most important part of the bill and that I have seen is the educational component. And the education, we mandated that in South Carolina that every school teach what Gavin's Law is, and that is raising awareness. But Gavin's Law itself, while there are laws on a federal level that can protect, Gavin's Law itself gave local law enforcement something that they could go across jurisdictions to charge people with felonies that are attacking our citizens.
So Sally came about, but a very important law, of course. But when we talk about that, we saw last week federal and state law enforcement announced the extradition of a Nigerian man who is the alleged suspect in the crime that resulted in your son's death. This was a long process. Tell us about this and how law enforcement made this arrest and getting him back to the United States, which is kind of rare in these situations.
Yeah, and it took a collaborative group effort in order to do so. I often say it started at my home the night that everything happened with Gavin. In South Carolina, if there is a death of a minor, SLED is already called out. So South Carolina Law Enforcement Division was there, York County Sheriff's Department was there, and they picked up on it being an extortion case prior to me knowing. And while we were going through the process, my 16-year-old son began to get messages, and my 14-year-old cousin was already being extorted, and his mom exposed it. So the local law enforcement and SLED were able to get involved and start taking over those conversations. Along the line, Homeland Security and FBI got involved as well, and they began to trace it. I remember sitting with what is currently our York County Sheriff, but he was not a sheriff at that time. A good friend of mine who had lost a son as well the year prior. And he was one of those men that I leaned on. And I told him, we'll hunt until the end of the earth to find out who's responsible for this. And that's what the team did. But it wasn't just law enforcement. You also have to take in the U.S. Attorney's Office. And U.S. Attorney's Office worked diligently with the Nigerian government, not only on the arrest, but also in the extradition process. And there have been a couple other cases involving sextortion where the person was extradited. However, the penalties weren't as steep as what they are here. And I think that delayed the case a little bit, but I'm thankful for the U.S. Attorney's Office on not giving up and continuing to pursue that.
Yeah, because there are multiple charges for this person, and then including up to life in prison, because the charge of child exploitation resulting in death alone carries a mandatory 30-year sentence. So a lot at play here. What were
up to life in prison.
Yeah. And what were your thoughts when that word came out that this person would be coming back to America to face justice?
Happy on hearing it, angry whenever I saw it. Seeing the person that is responsible for your child's death for the first time, that anger I can't explain. But you know what? Throughout this process, one thing that I've learned is to own my emotions and to quit acting perfect, to quit acting like we as adults have everything figured out, and just own your emotions and live in the moment. And I would lie if I just said this was a glorious day. It was a glorious accomplishment, and I get a lot of credit, but it wasn't me. The only thing I could do was stay out of law enforcement's way and continue being a vocal voice trying to save the next Gavin.
And when you talk about that, I mean, you hear from folks all the time. What's the current situation like, your day-to-day, maybe your monthly, when you talk to folks? What are you hearing? Is it seemingly never-ending?
It really is never-ending. I dealt with a teenager in South Carolina last night on the sextortion case. I deal with 1 to 2 really on a daily basis. In addition to every parent within the state that has lost a child, that is advocating for something, I'm the first person they go to, and you learn a lot of empathy once you realize what is important in life. but there's only so much that you can carry at the same time. So it can be overwhelming at times, and my strength comes from trying to stay focused.
And when you talk about getting strength from that and preventing the next incident or catastrophe, what have you maybe seen when it comes from law enforcement and maybe awareness? Do we know if there's any hard numbers you can point to in terms of convictions, arrests, things like that?
Convictions and arrests, I can't give you that number. But one of the shocking statistics, I began to work with National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. Mm-hmm. And one of the statistics, as I'm traveling around talking to teens about mental health that I share, was in 2021, it was only a couple hundred cases of exploitation reported to NCMEC. And just last year, it was over 3 million.
So we're breaking through and getting that word out there, and people are coming forward.
But those are reporting. Mm-hmm. And prior to Gavin, I believe that there wasn't those resources, and no one was speaking up because of the shame. Mm-hmm. My wife and I even had that conversation. Do we want people looking at our son as doing something that he was willing to lose his life to hide, and do we really want to expose that? And there are many parents that I've dealt with that have lost children that haven't come forward. Mm-hmm. But being able to come forward, and those teens that are brave enough to go to law enforcement, it makes such a difference because you can prevent the next person from being in that situation.
That was me talking with Rock Hill Republican Representative Brandon Guffey. You can catch that full interview on youtube.com/South Carolina ETV. And please, parents, stay up with what your kids are doing and who they are talking to online, on gaming platforms, anywhere. And create that space where you can support them. That's important too. Next up, a Washington moment. We're looking at the National Republican Senatorial Committee, which held its annual winter meeting at the Breakers in Palm Beach over the weekend. We were not invited. Got lost in the mail. Now, the NRSC is the Senate's fundraising arm and is chaired by South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. While the NRSC saw a record $8.5 million haul in January, a memo obtained by ABC News notes that the organization has $24 million in debt from the 2024 cycle. Scott has said he plans to build off the Republicans' 53-seat majority come the 2026 midterms, with a focus on defending Senator Tom Tillis' seat in North Carolina and Susan Collins' seat in Maine, while looking to flip seats in Michigan and Georgia. Now, Trump invited Scott and other Republican senators to Mar-a-Lago last Friday for dinner, and then Scott, his wife Mindy, Senator Lindsey Graham, and others flew with Trump on Air Force One to the Super Bowl in New Orleans. Speaking of Graham, he drew his first primary challenger with upstate businessman Mark Lynch, owner of Jeff Lynch Appliance Center in Greenville, who announced on Wednesday he was challenging Graham, who he called, in part, a traitorous, backstabbing, flimsy flip-flopper, and someone who has been working for the enemy during his whole 30 years in Washington. That being said, Graham's budget committee is starting the budget reconciliation process this week to advance Trump administration priorities on the border, energy, and military. That's because the House has kind of floundered on this. Sticking with Trump, President Trump has levied 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum coming into the country. This is very reminiscent of a similar tax he imposed on Europe in his first term. China, in retaliation to 10% tariffs imposed by America, has put 10 to 15% tariffs on $14 billion in goods like liquefied natural gas, coal, and crude oil, and some automotive goods. We got a little trade war going on here, folks. Mild. You heard from William Hawk in our previous episode. If you want some more trade info, that's where it is. Now, we will get consumer price index data on Wednesday, so we'll have new January inflation data for you. I know you're all dying for that. Data! The egg index is not looking good. egg econ pod. That egg information will coincide with Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell's semi-annual monetary policy report to Congress on Tuesday and Wednesday. And the U.S. economy added 143,000 jobs in January, according to the Department of Labor. The numbers show a cooling but solid month as the unemployment rate dipped to 4%. Welcome to the wind down section, our little break from the news. We're glad you're here. A.T. Shire, lead producer and Eagles superfan, is here.
Yes.
Congratulations
Thank
from
you
all
so
of
much.
us.
If anyone listens to Who, What, When, you know that I am on the record on that episode, on the Super Bowl record, calling for a 35-21 Eagles win. And I sold our boys a little short. Okay, yeah. We dog walked the Chiefs a little bit, and I maybe called it. And very vindicating. But before we get into that, Gavin, sort of still getting into it,
Sure.
we did get some calls, okay, of people in the sphere. So we got two. We're going to double dip.
Yeah.
Not a lot of time is going to be spent. They're pretty short. So if you're ready, let's hit this first one, okay?
Yes.
It's very easy. It's not going to take a long time.
Say it with me now.
Here we go.
Go Birds!
Okay.
Was that sent before? Or
That
after?
was sent at midnight.
Oh, God, I love that.
Yes. That
God
was
love
sent
you.
midnight.
They said, you know what? I got a phone number. I got a call. I'm doing this.
Oh, that was sent Sunday at 10:24 p.m. So that's about an hour after the game ended.
Sure.
Sorry, I misread that there. But yeah, I mean, short and sweet, to the point. Go Birds! Thank you so much,
Organic.
mysterious go Birdsmen.
Yes.
I love you very much. You can
Feel
come
free to
anytime.
call back and tell us some more things.
You can call in and yell that any time of year. I will play it year
or more
round.
things.
Yeah, more
more things.
Hey, more is welcome, but also the same thing is welcome. Also, I love it. Okay, next up we got a returning call. If you're ready,
Like a returning champion, some would say.
exactly.
You still haven't updated the voice message. This is the Flim Flam guy that called pretty recently. And if you're a frequent listener of the podcast, even further ago, the raw milk person. But Go Birds, congratulations. My wife was on a flight from Columbia to Philadelphia, and every time the Birds scored on the way over there, the pilot informed them of the touchdown or the field goal. So, Go Birds. Bye.
Oh, you gotta love consistency. We gotta love hearing from our Flim Flam guy here telling us about the Birds.
Oh yeah,
It's exciting.
I just love
the
that
community is here,
the sphere,
embracing you.
the sphere of influence.
Axis of evil.
It some might say it extends into the airspace. Okay,
Yes.
Gavin,
Chemtrails.
he has into international waters.
Correct.
He gets all the wet. We get the dry in the air. Okay,
yeah. Air rights are completely different.
That was it was a great weekend for me. Thank you everyone that called.
Especially because you kind of were on a bit of a roller coaster. You weren't feeling too great at the end of the week, and then
I was feeling I was sick. Okay,
Yeah.
I was sick. We had the stomach bug in my family. Little baby Rena
I was like, no.
got us sick. That's why we did a remote episode there. And Friday I was feeling bad. Saturday I was a little bit better. Sunday I was crystal clear and ready to I don't know, have crippling anxiety.
Correct.
I don't know, something like that. And it was great for most of the day. Gavin, you checked in on me.
I tried. I just always don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You know, should I say something?
He was nice.
I felt very comfortable at times when I did because I was like, oh, they're in such a strong position, which I know can change. But I was like, I can say something and not upset the juju.
It was about, 2 hours before the game I texted you, and I just said, the dread is here. The dread has set in.
Like, where's golf? I need to watch golf.
I felt,
right
and golf ended an hour and a half too soon.
But then I soothed you because I had a sighting, I had a vision.
Gavin, I would say
It was true. It
an
was
omen.
An omen, yeah.
An omen.
I saw America's beautiful bald eagle. I saw one flying.
Just a random
I was
one.
down in James Island with my dad, and I saw it. And I said, "Oh!"
Yeah.
At first,
This portends
methinks
well.
I heard it. I was like, "Ooh, is that an eagle?" And then you see the white head, and it's like, very rare.
Oh, you know an eagle when you see
And
an
then I was
eagle.
like, "Oh!"
Yeah.
So majestic. And then I thought, after I stopped weeping for our beautiful country,
Yes.
I was like, oh my goodness, the Birds. This is you. This is what this means.
Yeah, much like the pilot in the air.
I just instinctively put my hand over my heart. I was
Thank you.
singing the national anthem as
Yes.
loudly as I could. People were coming out of their homes applauding. It was a precursor. I mean, it was, yeah.
But let's get to the game here, Gavin, okay?
Let's break down some X's and O's.
Let's play that video. Shoot that, hit that video. We really got him, okay?
Demolished. Did they show? I didn't want. Again, I was driving back home from Charleston.
You
so I
listened.
listened
You
like
listened
an
to it.
old school sports
Old-timey,
guy,
which is
kind of fun.
It's
It
great.
is fun.
I will say this
focused.
as a weirdo, as an absolute degenerate. After every Eagles game, especially wins, there's just some guy on Twitter who syncs up all the good plays with the radio call.
Oh, I like that.
And I go back and I watch the whole thing.
Those
again
guys are
in clips.
masters.
Yeah,
I mean, my
it's
gosh. Move
so
over
good.
Tom Brady. This good. I mean,
Merrill Reese and Mike Quick, my two favorite guys. It was great. I don't know how it was for you, Gavin, but like I love the hubris that the Chiefs came into the game with, just thinking like, yeah, we only have one guy, and he's good enough to make up for all the other guys.
And what happens when the one guy gets a little shaky?
That's right. Yeah.
The whole house falls. And I'm not using this as like.
Man, can you talk about it in boat terms for me, Gavin?
What happens when there's just one captain and all the other folks don't know how to drive
your jib's
the boat.
broken.
And all you're doing is saying the captain, my captain, oh captain.
Yeah, but he's going down with the ship.
Yeah, and then you're like, wait a minute, what about the rest of us? And then there's like no first
Women
mate.
and children first. You only got a door, you know.
No one knows how to park the boat.
Exactly.
How do I park? No one knows how to park the boat. Yeah, no, thank you.
It was personally great. I have stories of juju for this game. Okay,
a lot of things aligned for you.
Caitlin was in a bad way during this game. It wasn't until it was like 37-6 that we locked eyes and a tear rolled down. And she knew in that moment. Where I'd been telling her all week. I was like a clarion call top of a mountain yodeling that we were going to win this game.
Sure, but how does that not just like conflate with just typical like rah fandom? Like
no,
you have the sight.
You know me. I'm a negative guy mostly.
That's true.
And so the fact that I was positive, she was nervous that I was so assured of a win. And then because I'll say this too, I'm going to out my dad here, okay? He is a germaphobe, right? He had been coming to my house every game of the season. We've watched every game from the same chair he sat there and has not moved. But being a massive germaphobe, we had the stomach bug.
With the bug, yes.
And so he had to wrestle with himself.
A family's fight.
Am I going to stay home away from the germs,
Correct.
or am I going to go into the sick den?
Sacrifice.
He came over. He sat in his chair.
God.
We won because he knew that if we lost and he didn't come,
yes,
Caitlin would have barred him from the home forever.
Yeah. I mean, and then also the biggest blessing in the entire Shire family extended kingdom.
This is
Baby Rena.
Baby Rena
came into your life last year.
She is a totem of good luck.
So you're gonna have another kid.
No, that could inverse the good luck.
Oh, Rena's just not gonna understand. Was she picking up on the stress in the family? Does she get stressed? Does she know?
She now knows
like
that
a show horse when they know that they're a competition.
She knows that the yelling at the green field on the TV is good. Because in the beginning of the season she was crying, and now at the end she looks at you to check, and if you start yelling and then clapping, she's like, yeah. So a big win.
That's like when I play Yahtzee with my nephews and they roll and they get a hot streak.
They
rolling.
don't know, yeah.
But then like when they don't do a good roll, you're like, oh, that's just as good.
We'll put it in chance. We'll put it in chance. We'll put it in chance.
She's picking up. She's getting hip.
Anyway, Gavin.
She only knows wins. She only knows Super Bowl wins.
She's 1 for 1. Life is downhill for her from here. I do think that that's the best Philadelphia sports team of all time, truly. And I hated the Harrison Ford Jeep commercial and the Orlando Bloom Cruise commercial.
I can't speak to. I have not seen any of them. I have to watch them on YouTube or something like that, just because it's always. Did you like any of them?
There was a Tim Robinson Totino's pizza roll
Totino's.
in the very end of the game that was good, and my dad full belly laughed at.
Good.
That was actually
That's good to see humor.
But
coming
to
back.
see Indiana Jones selling Stellantis vehicles and Legolas from Mirkwood selling cruises on sea malls is appalling to me. But
cruise ship Seymour.
let's go, people. Go Birds.
We'll leave it there with that little maritime tie-in.
We'll see. Yes, it had to end it on a boat, people. We'll see if
Seymour.
we're going to a parade. I don't know yet.
See.
We got to stay healthy through the week. Anyway, people, thank you. Goodbye.
See you on the Seamalls, folks. And thank you to all of our callers. Please show us your appreciation by giving us a shout at 803-563-7169. You guys can also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, and you can stay up to date with the latest news on scetv.org and southcarolinapublicradio.org. And don't forget to support your local newspapers. The South Carolina Lede is a production of South Carolina Public Radio. Our producer is A.T. Shire. Amy Crouch is our supervising producer. Sean Birch is our executive producer. This podcast is produced with support from PRX and is made possible in part by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, as well as listener contributions to the ETV Endowment of South Carolina. For the South Carolina Lede, I'm Gavin Jackson. Be well, South Carolina.
I have a DIY burn pit in my backyard.
You have to kind of put the wet with some dry.
Naturally.
You're brown with your wet.
Naturally.
And it gets hot. Like you cover it up. And
You
then
feel the heat.
You feel it.
You feel the heat.
You feel the process. Science is cool.